I am Karina Andersen. I'm an intuitive leadership coach and growth igniter. I am here on the Prosperity Show today, and I cannot wait to share this beautiful exploration with you between Prosper and myself. So stay tuned for what is to come.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we have a woman that figuratively is walking along the road less traveled. Now, Karina, how are you doing today?
I'm very good. Thank you, Prosper, for having me on your show. It's exciting, all the way from South Africa.
Well, absolutely. You see, I'm totally humbled by this because I'm from Zimbabwe and we're literally neighbors, But
Oh,
and the topic that we're going to be talking about today is one that is near and dear in my heart because I grew up around that, and also I have seen firsthand how if you have the value of the people around you, things can happen. If you want to go far, you go alone, but if you want to go further, you go together. So I can't wait to jump into this, Karina, so we can explore, first of all, your journey, who you are, and what it is that you're doing for humanity.
thank you. Thank you.
Uh,
I really, really appreciate it. And I mean, you're very lucky, Prosper, to have grown up with these values. And if there's one thing I always say today, I am so grateful that I raised my kids in South Africa, that they could be surrounded by the spirit of Ubuntu and learn these values very early in life, because I was lost before I came here.
Absolutely. I can't wait to jump into that. Now, for those that are watching right now, I want you to know something. Karina's story is one of a raw vulnerability and immense strength. I mean, after losing her partner in a tragic accident, she found herself at a crossroads, a place of profound transformation. And South Africa now became the stage where she stepped into her purpose and she found healing through a vibrant culture and the heartbeat of Ubuntu. We've already started dissecting, that aspect, and maybe you haven't heard about it before. So today is your lucky day. So because Karina is going to be, talking about how she walks barefoot into prisons, boardrooms, and hearts while spreading the message of authenticity and a connection, and also something that a lot of people are not really familiar with, but servant leadership. Now, that's a lot of accolades all in one sentence. So you can only imagine what this episode is going to unfold for you, because we're going to deep dive into Karina's journey, her fears, the ones that she overcame, or the ones that she's working through right now, and also the powerful lessons that she now shares with her clients through SmilingOne and also Circles of Change Academy. I'm already inspired just by talking to her. I had to welcome her into the Zoom, and before, I wish we were recording what we were talking about earlier on, because that is a book in and of itself, just how she showed up herself. So I really, really can't wait. So expect to be inspired, moved, and also equipped with actionable insights that could redefine your approach to life and leadership. Now, Karina, you're probably sitting there thinking, this guy is not even qualified to even be saying any of those things that I have done or who I'm becoming. Let's just maybe start from the beginning. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you're doing in aid of humanity today?
Hmm. So I think one of the, when you speak about being in aid of humanity, the first thing that just springs to my mind is that we got to start with ourselves. I think the biggest aid to humanity is when we start here and become awakened. We become somebody who really is present with each moment in each meeting, present with my kids, present with my partner, present with my family, with my clients, with my friends, and really understanding what that means. So for me, that is truly the biggest aid to humanity, to come into that space, because in that moment of presence, I'm able to truly see you and truly meet you. And that's also how I come in here today, and also understand, what can I give this moment, and what do how can I serve you? Because if you come and really want, and you're serious about getting into that servant heart of yours, and we all have one, by the way, but it's that journey of really awakening to all of you, and also awakening into a space where it's never just about you. It's always about we. It's all about, what can I do for humanity? And South Africa has really, when I came here more than 18 years ago, she took me and she said, Karina, you need help. I really needed help, because I was floating rudderless in time and space. And the last 18 years have been an awakening journey of me healing. I'm still healing, of me really beginning to connect all my dots, and also to understand there's purpose in my pain. Very often we live in a way where we feel victimized by what's going on in our lives, around us, our upbringings. But once we understand, and I keep saying, my meaning in the madness puzzle piece. So that's for me, what I'm doing is being present with myself, with my clients, my awakening, so I can serve ultimately what you need in your journey. If you need awakening, if you need a travel companion, if you need somebody to help you with a toolkit to fully step into your own presence and your own purpose. So that's really what I'm here to do, to serve those around
Mm,
and to serve
fantastic.
humanity.
And thank you so much for putting that into, that sort of succinct way of describing yourself. Now, you did say 18 years ago you came into South Africa. Where were you coming from?
So I grew up in Europe and in Denmark. I lived in Germany. I was also did a short stint in America as part of my rudderlessness. Very often when we don't have direction and we have not yet connected our dots and found meaning, um, we're just floating. We're floating without much purpose and without much meaning. And the reason I did that was because I was still having so much wounding. I was still allowing my past to define every single moment of my journey. And when I did my last year, so when I'd been here for 17 years in South Africa, I did a little snapshot of my journey, and I divided it into three chapters. With the first one, 1 to 17, was my wounded chapter. And when I got kicked out at 17 and started my rudderless journey, which became the next 17 years of really floating, I ended up in Germany, and I got two beautiful children. So, I'm not saying my journey wasn't full of magical moments, but because I was still not aligned to my purpose, I was still like all over the place. I did a little bit of everything. So I started off in banking in the early days in Denmark because my parents thought that was a good idea. So everything kind of was like, I wasn't making the decision. I ended up in Germany because I met a German man. I actually also ended up in South Africa because I met a man who was wanting to come to South Africa. So I ended up in America because I wasn't quite sure where to go or where to be, or who is Karina? And a lot of people struggle with that question. And guess what I realized when I came to South Africa? That all the things that I was struggling with, I could help people because I connected my dots the last 18 years here in South Africa. I realized that all these things are like my human laboratory. I'm practicing and rehearsing and figuring out what it means to arrive home in our hearts. And that's why I call my third chapter my homecoming chapter, because I finally understood what I'm here to do. With all of it, a mixed bag of everything, pain, trauma, you name it, I got it. So when I go into a client process, that is also inside our prisons here in South Africa. I say, I'll show you my scars and you show me yours. And that's how we journey together. What I offer is deep, profound journeys. Also, when I go into boardrooms, there is no such thing as just going from A to B in our journey. We got to go deep to really harvest the depths of our journey so we understand what I'm here to do. So it just gives you a picture of the fullness of a journey across a full spectrum from darkness to light.
Absolutely. I quite like that because so many of us just get started in life, and wherever they grow up in is where they obviously end up at, and they don't have this vast experience. First of all, moving to a different country, and second of all, finding your feet in a whole different country. I can, sort of compare to that. It's not easy.
Ja.
And obviously going to German, ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch, aber mein Deutsch
Ah,
ist
sehr gut. Das
I
hört sich ja gut an. Ja.
you see that you go there, you're learning a different language, you're really connecting with the people, and you're starting from scratch. Whereas everybody else around you is, starting from wherever they are, in space. So that alone gives you a profound sort of understanding of the world. But these experiences, would you
Mm.
say, were somewhat of a rite of passage or some sort of a self-discovery journey that, yes, during the time they looked like, you were wondering generality, but you are not who you are without these stories put together?
Absolutely. And it's really important to understand that everything is part of your experience. You're always smack in the middle of your purpose. The difference is how conscious and how present you are with your experience. And of course, those first 34 years where I wasn't sure, where am I? Who am I? Was all part of that, because I had disconnected from myself. I lived in separateness. But today, it's not that the journey is less troublesome or less, like there's always big events happening. But the difference is I'm now a student of my journey. It's fine. You can throw me a curveball. I'm going to climb that mountain because I know it's on the mountain that the champion is born. So when I speak about connecting the dots, and it's also what I help my clients with, we go back into the journey. We look at all those things that just appeared like life is happening to me and not for me. And as we connect the dots, we begin to see, but actually, I've been rehearsing for my purpose all along. And that makes all the difference. And you bring presence into each moment. So yes, every step I've taken, both with shoes and without shoes, have really been part of shaping who I am today. And also so that I can truly understand and serve my clients' journeys, that I can be the best mom for my children, that I can be a loving and caring and kind partner to my to my life partner. All these things are part of who we become. And also because I have a lot of, I've tried out many versions of Karina. And when you try out different versions, it's almost like trying out different suits. You're like, okay, do I like this one? Do I like this one? Do I like this one? And, I'm busy writing my third book, and my third book starts by looking at the relationship I was in with my with the father of my children. And I had so much pain when I look back about who I was back then, because I was unconscious. I was stuck in pain. So was he. There was a lot of unconsciousness in how we engaged with each other. And it became like a almost like a compass, it became for me, I don't want to be like that. I want to improve who I am in the world. I want to be the best version I can be. And it kind of like that became my starting point. And any journey starts with where is it that you struggle? It starts with a really honest conversation about where we're stuck and who we don't want to be. And that can inform the journey, why we go onto the journey. And then we begin to shape into this version we become where I today stand and appreciate all the different stages of that journey of becoming.
You see, in all of this, people are always doing what they best can do at that particular moment with the best information and the best know-how. Otherwise, if they knew better, they would do better. And hence, fish do not see the water that they swim in, and neither can we see the air that we breathe.
Yeah.
Was there a particular event or a point that was then the catalyst that got you to, like you keep saying, you were unconscious? But was there a part that really got you to sit up and say, whoa, what has happened to the last 30 or so years of my life?
Well, when I arrived in South Africa 18 years ago, and I came here with a partner, and after 3 weeks, he ended our relationship, that was a big wake up moment for me. Because, as I said, I always use the word rudderless and unconscious. I hadn't really taken charge of my journey. And that is in any journey really important that you start to participate, that you decide today's the day I'm going to show up. And I grabbed those oars in my rowing boat and I decided I'm going to take charge. And I was so scared because if you've never really taken charge, because I grew up in a performance space, I grew up in a business, I grew up also in quite a violent and hostile environment. So I had a lot of fear and I had to break through a lot of fear. And coming from here to South Africa and starting my entrepreneur journey, like for real, and grabbing those oars and facing my fears and crossing all these thresholds became that moment where I proved to myself the past is not going to define this moment and it's not going to define my future. And every day I get up and I grab those oars and I decide what am I going to do today. And I've connected all my dots. I know where I'm coming from. So that was a big defining moment for me, Prosper, on my journey.
Wow. I mean, you would have traveled and been to all these places, preparing yourself for the next thing, but nothing prepares you for being left alone in a world where nobody knows your name and you don't even know the street you live in yet.
No, it's huge. It's huge. And then to be exposed, because quite soon after that, a year into arriving in South Africa is also where South Africa started opening my servant heart. She says, come on, let me show you the real magic and get out of the me space, the survival space, the fearful space, because that's where we just get into separateness, and invited me into South African prisons. And I love how the journey unfolds. And when you get front row seats to people's journeys, and not just, every journey is powerful. These are extreme journeys, extreme journeys. And to see the courage to break up with old worlds, old paradigms, with fear, to challenge old versions and say, I want a new version. I don't know yet how I'm going to get there or how it's going to look like, but I know I don't want the old. And that, we say that these guys, these men, they were my brothers in change because because I was really angry, Prosper. I had a lot of anger. It was one of the first things I had to break through. If you have a lot of trauma and a lot of pain, you might not, you might have packed it neatly away like I did. I didn't think I had a lot of trauma because I was so good at surviving. But there was a lot of anger I had to deal with. And I had some of those first anger conversations in circles inside prison. Also, when I go into boardrooms, there's a lot of anger. And I love what happens when we are in circles and we begin to have the honest conversations. We begin to say it as it is. We begin to see also that no matter where you are, you don't have to be in a maximum prison. Just because you cannot see the bars doesn't mean you're not in prison. I had to break out of my incarcerated mind. I had to remove those locks I'd put around my heart that kept me from trusting people, trusting the journey. And that's why I was rudderless. Today, I listen. I'm being guided by the journey. And that's also the essence of what I help people with, because once we dare to step outside of the old constructs we created, all those fearful constructs, we begin to actually participate. We begin to see each other. We begin to care more about each other. And that's what South Africa has taught me. That's what Ubuntu is all about. I realized this is not just about me. This is about we. And the more I started helping them, and I've spent 17 years, I've had prison projects for 17 years as part of my caring practice, while doing entrepreneur work and work in boardrooms and with families and so on. I've been everywhere with my journey. But that service, and when you begin to see the magic that takes place when you help somebody else, and you begin, and that's one of the biggest dots for me to connect to. I'm nothing without you. And if you're not well, I'm not well.
I love that. See, growing up, we were always told, if you want to go far, you could go alone. But if you really want to go further, you go together. Do you know how that statement was actually formulated? Right. So when people would go on a hunting trip, right, there could be 4 or 5 people that go on a hunting trip. One is the sporter. The other
Mm,
one is a sharp shooter. The
yeah.
other one is a good forager for berries and food before you catch the food. And
Mm,
another one is a strong person who's going to carry the deer or the buck
mm,
back home. And another one is just to look around for snakes or anything that
mm.
could kill them while people are on an expedition. But
No,
if you
completely.
if you would go by yourself, you wouldn't go any further because you want to do all of those jobs and everything else around. So obviously for you, South Africa would have played a very significant role in your transformation. What is it about maybe the culture and that Ubuntu philosophy that helped you to first of all heal and then find
Well,
your
it's an energy and it's really difficult to explain. I came from a culture in Denmark, and bless them. I'm very mindful of not judging other people. The culture it's more reserved, it's more distant, it's not as warm and embracing the moment I got here. And I mean, remember, I came here 3 weeks later. I was not on the streets, but almost on the streets because my partner who brought me here kicked me out. And immediately there were people like just coming in around me to see how can I help? How can I help? And I've never experienced that before. And I was such a lone ranger. And that was one of my prisons that was really difficult to break free of. So it took some years for me to fully understand and appreciate the power of Ubuntu. But there's just no way that you can resist that because it's just seeping into every single cell of your experience. I see it also now if I travel somewhere else. If I go to Europe and I come back home, you just hear the singing and the warmth and the different cultures and I love the diversity here. I love it's just beautiful to be invited into different ways of being in this lifetime, how people interpret the human experience. And there's room for everything here. And I love that because the Danish culture has a lot more judgment and a lot more, strictness around it, where here it's just open and warm. And I felt like for the first time that I could be home in myself and I could be home here. It took me time to learn to trust. But over these last 17, 18 years, I really come home in that. And it is also what I try to be an example of when I invite people into my space, into my world, and into the guidance space, that people feel you're not on this journey alone, because that is a big misunderstanding. And I love the
Mhm.
analogy that you also brought about. And I think it's really, really important once we understand that it's a symphony. It's not a solo. It's a symphony, and harmony takes not just one note, it always takes one more. And once we begin to understand what it means to harmonize as a culture, we take it to the next level. So also if I go, when I go into projects, we've just concluded a 6-year school project and helped lift the school culture and got the teachers on board, the students on board, and everybody owning a share in that symphony that is taking place to realize it's a symphony. If I go into a business culture, the same. Can we recruit, the different people to start seeing I'm a shareholder in the well-being of the collective here? And that's always how I work. I find those like early adopters who wants to beat the drum of change in that leadership environment, that gets really excited about, okay, let's infect this environment positively. And as I started saying in the very beginning, they realize it starts with me for a better way. So they work on themselves and they become lighthouses in that environment, and they start to ripple it out, because you would have people who learn differently. Not everybody is as open. Some people are like I was, Lone Rangers. And it's something for also to the listeners to think about, what is my prison? What is it that keeps me separate from the collective conversation, from the collective energy? Can I be moved and touched by the warmth and the spirit of Ubuntu? Because I am. Because you are. Can you be touched by it? And if not, what separates you? And that's the first conversation.
Now, you see, the one thing that is happening right now, Karina, is we're on a podcast or somebody's watching this video right now.
Yeah.
But you're not a podcast guest if I'm not a podcast host. And we do not have a product or something if we don't have the listener who is paying close attention to what we're saying right now. So many people might not know the connection that would be happening right now. So right now I am a podcast host or interviewer only because you showed up. If you didn't show up, I'm a dad who's sitting in the office who is probably yelling at their kids to not bang the door to say, hey, come and play with me, dad. So what you're just saying is, who are you in the grand scheme of things, and to who at what particular time? And so many people still wear their boardroom suit at the dinner table. That's the different table.
Yeah.
And that's a prison they're in, and they can't get out of that. I don't know, maybe you can speak to that a little bit, because many...
We don't know what we don't know. And that's also why being exposed, listening to a podcast, that's often, it starts with curiosity. And there will be something nudging us, something in our life that isn't working. There will be things that starts happening to shake us, that create some discomfort, so that we try to get a little bit, just a toe outside the comfort zone to start with, because I know that very well myself. I had no clue that I needed to change, in the beginning, because I loved the Lone Ranger, because I felt it kept me safe, because I had a past of unsafety. But the problem with that is we keep using the past to define this moment, and it will define our future unless we allow something new in. So by listening to this podcast, you get exposed to a different conversation. And for me, if you know the 4 competency model, in order to get out of that, I'm unconsciously incompetent, I have to be exposed to a different conversation. So I begin to notice my blind spots. I begin to see, oh, my goodness, I'm in prison. That we become consciously incompetent. And it's something I'm also including that in my new book. And it's not a new model. It's an ancient model. But I'm just giving it a little bit more flavor as well. And so that we can begin to engage the conversation about what is my prison? What are the things that I could look at deeper into? what is that brutal conversation I need to have? The next step is to begin to become equipped for the shifts that needs to take place. And of course, that's where I serve as an intuitive leadership coach and growth igniter. That's part of what my purpose, my journey has molded me into. Not just from it's easy to go and read a book, and I'm all for education, but there's also, in terms of the work I do, there is the life that molds you and shapes you. And where you, through your experience of going through all this, the journey has offered you, that you build a toolkit and you build a path that can help those shift so that you can ride those storms and you can ride those waves and you can step into personal mastery. And that's where you become victorious, because very often people feel defeated. My Lone Ranger, I was defeated. I see many people in different roles defeated. And that's where the prisons come up. That's where the distancing comes up. But we can become victorious in our journey if we are starting this this conversation. And that's my invitation to everybody who's listening out there. To be curious, taste the buffet. And don't mind going into the discomfort. It is going to be uncomfortable to change, I promise you. But you can choose a travel companion, and that makes all the difference. To have allies on the journey. That helped me here in South Africa. I had a lot of allies.
But Karina, you don't know my neighbors, you haven't seen the lady I work with, and you haven't
Exactly.
seen you haven't seen the people that live across from me. You can't be
Yeah,
Ubuntu with people like that. You
I
know what I
hear
mean?
you. I know all about that, because I've traveled far. I know all about that. But you see, I think everything is meaningful. For me, everything is full spectrum consciousness. So even when it's darkest, that also has a purpose. Everything is part of that. Let me take you into prison for a moment, because that is what somebody would say inside a prison environment. I don't know if you can imagine a prison environment like inside a maximum prison where everybody, is there, they've done crime. It's really dark. It's like consciousness is far out. And suddenly an inmate comes to a session and he starts a different conversation and he wants to infect that environment with light. I say, remember what I said? It starts with you. So yes, they're lost. Why don't you shine a light into their darkness? It starts with you. And there will be people on the journey that you can gather with, because you see, the moment you start switching on the light, it's going to attract the people into your journey because you show you're ready. So inside a prison, it takes us 2 years and suddenly we have a group. Then there are, it starts with a few, then there's a group of 10, then it grows to 20. It's like nature. That's why, when I thought about, okay, I'm going to come into this podcast today, I'm going to bring nature with me, because everything is a process. It's not a flip a switch. We live in an age of instant gratification. We have to remember that trees take time to grow. Plants take time to grow. And so does it wherever you are, however unconscious it is. Plant a seed and start with yourself first.
Now, is that the reason why when we're flying, they say you want to put your mask on first so that you are going to be helpful to those that are going to be around you? Otherwise, if you're all so winded, then you're useless to everybody else that will be around you.
No, well, absolutely. And I think we are lucky that we have access today. So in terms of you needing fuel for your journey, because everybody around you is not conscious. Today, you can tap into this podcast, you can tune in and you can get some outside inspiration, because let's be honest, if you've been so used to living in the prison you're in, again, it takes time to get out of it and you would need some inspiration. I call that like watering holes in the desert. And I write about that, in the book I published a few years ago, 10 Leadership Lessons, how we find these spaces of inspiration. Ultimately, the journey is, of course, about you tapping into the wealth of inner resources that are accessible to you. And that's what I realized on my journey. I felt so alone. Karina's all alone in this world. But the moment I opened myself and I realized there's so much around me that supports me, I'm not alone, I started to tap in to my core and the wealth of inner resources I have right there. And I know this is just, and I know what you are saying, Prosper, in terms of if I've never had this conversation before, I don't necessarily know what that means. It might seem very foreign to me, and it is a journey home into your heart. It took me 18 years. It's not going to take you 18 years, by the way. I was really lost and out there. But to really start tapping in and seeing that you have something to express, you have a potential that is just waiting for you to step in and unlock it and blossom. So it's one step at a time and tuning in.
Absolutely. So the kind of work that you do takes you to prisons, boardrooms, and people of all walks of nature. I mean, these are diverse places. In a prison, that's like you did allude to it as a dark, empty space where we also have boardrooms that are seemingly free, but the reason why people are there is a prison in and of itself. Is mortgages, probably have an annoying wife. I don't know why they go to work because they just can't stand their wife at home or things of that nature. What is maybe the common thread that connects these seemingly different environments?
Well, it is all that we are incarcerated. When I look at some of the big lessons on the journey that I realized is that imprisonment, how we get stuck and we lock ourselves, depending, we all have different journeys, we've all had different circumstances, but we are masterful in creating stories and we lock ourselves up into our stories and we get lost into those spaces. And that is what disconnects us. And it doesn't, it's almost even worse outside the physical prison because at least you are in a prison and you've gotten a sentence, so it's right in your face, where most people out in the world, in our societies and our communities and families, they don't know they are imprisoned, and they also don't know how harmful that place is. And fact is, when we are imprisoned, we are incredibly harmful to others and to ourselves. And so was I. I spoke about my anger. So that's why those prison breaks. So I help facilitate prison breaks from the constructs, mental constructs, the paradigms we're stuck in, to really get back into our hearts. And with that, I mean, because I'm often asked, so how do I do that? How do I redirect? So it's value-based leadership. We all need North Star. So in order to start shifting our direction, we need a little bit of help. So for me to step out of judgment, part of my survival, I was very judgmental, very controlling. And I invited the value of kindness. I said, judgment and kindness cannot exist in the same space. And whenever I felt the judge show up, the control show up, I said, I'm going to practice kindness. So these are little hacks, that I learned on my journey of starting redirecting and what it meant to come into my servant heart, what it meant to be a better mom. I said, I don't want to be an angry mom, a controlling mom, a mom who always judges or shouts at my kids, because I did when I was a younger version of myself, an earlier version of myself. And today, my values are respect, love. I am deeply honest, so those values, and my kids, they copy and paste, they are incredible human beings. And we have to think about that we as people, when the youth looks at us and they copy and paste that, a lot of the problems we have today, and I see it, and a lot of the youth I meet in prison have copy and pasted really harmful behaviors because we're all a little bit lost, a lot of us. And that, again, speaking to people out there who are tuning in, who are curious, who are hungry about change and the possibility of change, it's again, do I harm or do I build? And another question, and these are questions I pose in this book, how can I rebuild? Because I had to start to rebuild a lot of things because I'd also damaged a lot of things as an unconscious mom and partner.
And
Yeah.
so many of those things, I mean, we might just go into them, but your journey is all about overcoming this old version of yourself that
Yeah.
seemingly was just traveling along. You know, we just flew across to Thailand, and I don't know if it's the same in South Africa, but when you're flying, they give you an allocation of, kilograms that you can travel with. So with
Yes.
Jetstar, I think it's 7 kilos on in the inside
Yes.
and luggage, and the rest is probably 21 or so kilos. But if you go any gram above that 7, you're paying for 3 tickets for the whole flight. You know what I mean? So a lot of people are traveling heavy with emotions, whatever feelings that they have. And you actually did have a rucksack full of all of those things.
Absolutely. Yes. And I often use that analogy, in my work, because in order for us to fully own that we would harm, because if I have 500 kilos of anxiety with me from my journey and fear, of
That
course, it also illustrates that it's not going to take 5 minutes to shift that. So it's big when we step into our journey to allow time and space for a journey. It's not going to take 5 minutes to break up with this, but it's the biggest gift you can give to yourself and to the people around you is to transform your luggage. Because somebody wrote the other day on LinkedIn, like, no, we should just leave the old behind. But what I help people become alchemists. You're going to learn to transform your desert into an oasis. You're going to turn lead into gold. Because one of the things I realize, all the things I've experienced, I use them today in my career and my business. They're all transformed. They don't weigh me down any longer. I have healed. And we all need healing, by the way. But the good news is we all have medicine inside of us. And the medicine gets activated the moment we realize there's purpose in my pain or whatever you've gone through. There is a purpose. And that is what's going to transform the heavy luggage into more lightness, especially if you can become that lighthouse and you can shine some light in your community, in your environment. So if everybody's sleeping around you and you've opened your eyes and you become more awake, how can you shine a light? Because remember, if they are struggling, if they're hurting still, so are you, because you are a cell in the body of we, and so are they. Imagine if one cell in your body was hurting inside your physical body, you would do everything you could. The entire body get everything it does to help heal. Why don't we do that when we see somebody outside? Because they look like they're outside of us, right?
Mm.
So allow your journey to serve somebody else's journey. That is part of the servant heart. That's part of Ubuntu. And you're going to realize the moment you do that, something shifts in your own luggage, something shifts in your story.
So many people are traveling heavy, and they're
Yeah.
holding on to every little bit of they wronged me, so that's the reason why my ancestors fought with his brother's ancestors, so I'm gonna fight that battle with them. And I feel like you can't climb the ladder of success or happiness with your hands full. What you're saying is let go and let it just vanish, and then from there.
Transform. Transform. Yeah. Transform it. Yeah.
But if if that's the authenticity, Karina, some of us are not really nice people.
No, so I disagree. I know that we have, so who you are in your essence. So when I go into a prison, or a boardroom, wherever somebody is imprisoned, there is a call that I see in you that is beautiful. But many of us, yes, have forgotten, and we have come up, we have really bad behavior. So that's what you're talking about, right? But that's not who you are. And so I often have that conversation with my clients because we think we're that. I said, no, no, no. We can unlearn that. We got to do better. But we got to have the conversation about where we're at. So yes, it's good to start with, I'm really not doing great. I'm not behaving great. I was angry. I was not behaving great. And then start that journey of, but what does it then mean to be guided by values to do better? What does a better version look like? And I find that once you begin to gift yourself to others and your journey, and you begin to share that, and somebody else say, wow, you've done that shift, and you begin to collaborate. And also in work environments, I see that in the spaces I've been so lucky to serve, in business spaces, in small businesses, any environment, families. It's amazing what happens when we begin to care about each other's transformation, and then you can elevate an entire environment. So we have to transform the spaces to elevate them into I often speak about frequency and energy so that it vibrates at a much higher level. Density is when we're stuck in all the luggage we carry with us. So once we transform that and help each other grow, you get into a more elevated space. And guess what happens in a space when you run business in an elevated, energetic space? Everything comes into your journey. Like manifestation, you manifest many more things more rapidly because there's not such density anymore. So I also help entrepreneurs really step into that much more elevated space where where business finds you.
Mm. You see, so many people try to, and you've really helped with explaining the integration of things, of people, and things of that nature. But as humans as well, we come at a crossroads where my personal life should not mingle with my business life or my spiritual growth or things of that nature. How do you then help people integrate all of these aspects, like you said, into a symphony? Because if anything, we could have been recording this, and my little girls and the dog and the neighbors' little kids would have been playing around me, and obviously that would have been a distraction. But how do you then get people to understand that symphony and make sense of it in a way that it is all obviously for the greater good?
So it's a really good question, and it's an important question. So in a coaching space, the first huge milestone is to become the student. What we're working towards, become the student, because then once you step into the student seat, everything now becomes your teacher. Your business becomes your teacher. Your neighbor is your teacher. Your child is your teacher. Everybody's a teacher. You're no longer just the parent or the CEO of your business or the husband or the wife. You are the student. And that is the biggest, most important leap is into the student seat. Because from there on, and you start to learn, you become the apprentice, everything is a teacher. Now, when you take the apprentice, the being taught into your business, you realize everything is there to teach me. Everything is there to elevate me. And now nothing is separate anymore because you realize your child just taught you something you can use at your next board meeting. So it happens quite, gradually once we start to instill that mindset and start to instill lesson by lesson by lesson that rucksack, because and those lessons are not heavy. They kind of make things lighter. And you see there is no separation. And it's an incredibly spiritual path every single moment of that. Because energetically, once you begin to put meaning and purpose into things, you're already having a spiritual conversation. So we often, in order for us to become the apprentice, to become the student in our journey, we need to let go of the victim. And the victim, like, oh, look what you're doing to me, and everything. It's like we're pointing outwardsly. We're not owning our journey. The moment we make that huge shift, we're already having that conversation. So step by step, it integrates, Prosper. It's not like, okay, that you can map it exactly. It just happens because the journey happens, like nature happens and growth happens. Everything now becomes part of your symphony. So even like when I had the car accident, we had the car accident in 2002. Back then I couldn't integrate it, but now I keep going back and I keep harvesting, saying, of course, we would have loved not to lose him. Torsten was the name of their dad and my partner. But I'm going to put a flower in every single experience I've had so I can harvest in that field. Coming to South Africa, being kicked out after 3 weeks, it was difficult in that moment, but I go back and see, wow, look what I did with the moment. Look what I did. 2014, armed robbery. Poof. Like it took me a year of release and anxiety. Last year, my son having a mental health crisis, I was like, it was so tough. But all of these things help me integrate all the lessons across all the areas in my life, and I can use it everywhere because everything is one. I'm not a split person. I bring everything with me in every moment.
So when people come to you there, Karina, what are they walking away with?
So when people come to me, the first thing we do is we do a journey map session to understand what is it that you need from me. I want to make sure that I help you with what's most urgent in your journey. So all people walk away with an elevation from where they came with, the starting point, their struggle, and they took a step towards reclaiming their power. They took a step towards becoming that elevated version of themselves. They walk away with a step towards remembering who they truly are. They walk away with tools. They walk away with skills they've already practiced while being in the coaching space. Many clients stay for longer because they love the space of soundboarding, of being witnessed in the journey, being seen, having a space where they can just share how the journey is, no judgment, just being seen, and then going back out there and doing the work and coming back in to refine. So these are the journeys, whether they come for 5 sessions or they come, for a few years to do their journeys, they keep elevating and having those deeply honest conversations with themselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. I quite like that. And obviously, what would be the best way that people can maybe get started in these journeys? Would it be through the 10 leadership lessons, or have you got other pathways that people can jump on board?
So thank you. So first, we book a journey map discovery sessions. That's the first part in order to understand what is it that you need right now. Let's listen to your journey, what's most urgent. And depending on it's like you're going to the tailor. We got to first tailor the suit that fits uniquely to your journey. And from that, I have my online academy. I have now my third book in writing. We're going to take the tools that are really singing with your journey where you are right now. So it depends on also the work you've done previously. I have many different clients coming to me, as you know. So it really depends on what you bring already in your suitcase. And we're going to tailor a unique experience for you.
What I'm hearing, Karina, there is you're literally giving people back to themselves. So
Yeah.
they come to you with that which they have and they think it's unsurmountable. Then with the work that you do, first of all, with that assessment and then the coaching and everything else, you're literally transforming that luggage that they had into, if it was lead, you're turning that into gold. If it was wood, you're now turning that into a usable chair or something that they can literally use just
Yeah.
by allowing them to not only just be seen, but also to see themselves. Is that a great understanding of?
Yeah, so I help because I don't do it for them, but I help them do that. I help them transform their lead into gold. I help them step into their power. And that's really, if you want to, just like a few words, I help them reclaim their power, their innate power that has always been there, and to feel that fire, reignite that fire. And then what happens? Hunger naturally comes, and it's like, I can't wait to unpack my purpose, So you get that incredible excitement about being reawakened into your journey. Yeah. And it's a privilege to serve as a travel companion in that. Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot because so many people are just wandering in the world and nobody has really told them or taught them that there could be
Mm.
another way. I mean, talking about how life is really, especially I'm speaking from where I'm at right now. People are born, right? You get born, you go to kinder, then you go to high school. From high school, maybe you fall in love or you don't, and then you go to university, and then from there, get a job, get a bit of a promotion. Then you're now in that boardroom prison, which you were talking about, and if luck goes your way or whatever it is, get a couple of kids, a house with a picket fence, then get a disease, and then die.
Oh,
Where
hey.
Whereas, and if that was a Hollywood, series or a Netflix show, that would have been 30 minutes plus commercials, and then that just happens in that sort of way. But what you're offering is somewhat of a pattern break, somewhat of a it could be better, somewhat of a hey you
Yeah. Hey,
stop.
you wake up. Yeah. Hey, you wake
Here's a
up.
mirror. Here's a
Exactly.
mirror. Have you seen this before? And then they look back in the mirror and they're like, where was this person before?
Mm.
I kind of
Beautiful.
feel that sort
Mm.
of exchange happening. And so for the obviously, and it's somehow, for lack of a better way of explaining it, akin to a rite of passage, really.
Mm.
When I was growing up in Zimbabwe, we when you get to the age of 16 or 13, you're sort of
Yeah.
called in by the village elders. And then they're like, son, daughter, come. And they
Yeah.
proverbially tap you on the shoulder. And then they say,
Mm.
it's your turn to lead. Pretty much after
Mm.
that, you can now be allowed to do, or be involved in adult conversations, especially like you were talking about sitting in a circle. You can now hold the stick and
Yeah.
your voice can be heard because now you're an adult. And that is very significant and is akin to like a bar mitzvah or like a quinceanera and things of that nature. I kind of feel
Yeah.
like this is what you're presenting to people, but in a very nice, neat package and without the gore and drama that comes with National Geographic's. But I don't know.
Super
Is
prosperous.
would
Yeah,
that be?
no, I hear you, and I would like to add that I think life and the journey continuously tries to initiate us, but we're not listening. We're not paying attention. We're just calling it life is troublesome. And part of this toolkit, this awakened leadership toolkit, that you get through the Circles of Change Academy, is to begin to read life, listen to the journey, listen to the signs, listen to all these calls of adventure for initiation into the next level of yourself and your leadership. And so I'm just a travel companion, and I share my own experience of going through one initiation after the other, of life keep calling me, summoning me, Karina, wake up, wake up. Purpose is calling. And that's really so it happens all the time around us. And that's like, it's beautiful to arrive at that place and realizing that life is for me, not against me. And there is so much more going on. And there we need each other. So I'm here to be an ally to people, to help them awaken into that and get the tools and skills to master that. Yeah.
And obviously, since we've established there's a bit of an awakening happening, for those that are uninitiated, where would they go to on the internet to find you?
So circlesofchange.academy. So very simple. I can be found on all the platforms, LinkedIn, Karina Andersen, and on Facebook as well. So I use all these channels to showcase my work, also just to share inspiration, to be like a lighthouse and just share for, no matter where you are on the journey, and so that you can find me on Instagram as well. So I have different, but I'm sure you're going to share those as well, Prosper. Hey, so the different links.
Absolutely, I have all that information. I'll just
Thank
put it
you.
all in the show notes. I just wanted you to give us permission to do that. Now, Karina, I mean, we could go on and on. I mean, there's so
I
much.
know.
Your life story and your experience has so much depth and value that each aspect and each segment, in and of itself, is a book waiting to be written. I mean, you introduced us to the Danish slash German American girl that travels along the world, around the world, to then end up in South Africa, where, well, the crime rate is at its peak, and she's on the streets now after 3 weeks, and goes back to the prisons and sees all those people that could have armed, robbed her, or anything like that, and still comes onto the online prosperity show to share her story. If we would go back and sit, you and I, on a park bench and watch the younger Karina in Denmark right now doing whatever she's doing, what would you whisper into my ear and say, "Oh, look at what she's doing. I wish she was."
No, 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 no. I would say, look at her. She is putting the first little puzzle pieces in place for my purpose. She's doing the toughest part of the journey. And I want to go back and say thank you, because I know today I need those puzzle pieces so I can help people, so I can open my heart and serve people, so that I can help people heal their pain and step into their light.
We would all just stand up and go hug her then, wouldn't we? Because she's
Yeah, she needs a hug. She definitely needs a hug. But I'm grateful for her, Prosper. And that's what we have to understand. A lot of people want to change their life and their journey in terms of, oh, I wish I hadn't this and that. No, it's all part of your journey, every part of it. Love your journey, love yourself, appreciate yourself, and go back to whoever it is in the past and give thanks.
absolutely.
Give
So, you have taken us on this journey, but as with anything, people want closure or want something to look forward to. What's next? Where are we headed with all of this, Karina? What should we
Oh, it's an exciting year. I'm gonna publish my third book. I'm in the last stretches of writing my book. I am also going to host more and more coaches in my coach academy. So the Circles of Change Academy, we educate coaches in this method. So if you're a coach out there, if you feel calling to add this tool and skill to your path, your career, there's a lot to be excited about. There's a lot coming up on the horizon this year. Yeah.
now, Karina? I know we just put this episode together on short notice and everything else, but you've actually just said you coming up with a new book. Maybe we should actually sit down in your next book and really go through all those aspects, or
When it comes
even
out.
go through the 10 leadership lessons. We could do them either one by one, or see how we can do this where the time permits. I don't know. We'll see how that works.
Yeah,
But I had a lot of fun talking to you today.
me too, Prosper. It was lovely. Thank you for having me.
Great stuff. Now, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, obviously, for those that are watching, I also want to thank you, because we're not producing this content if you're not there to watch it or share it with your loved ones. And I feel like Karina's journey just really reminds us of the power of resilience, authenticity, and walking that road less traveled. And she has actually done it barefoot and bald. So it's so much to be desired by that alone. So for those that are watching, if this conversation has moved you, I really encourage you, like I said earlier, to share it with somebody who might need a message like this today. And maybe you need to go back in and rewatch this, because I certainly am. There's so many different aspects where we went to here that if you re-watch it with open eyes and open mind, it might actually have a totally different meaning than how you first encountered it. So that is something that I would actually encourage you to do. And if you got all you needed from this show, I encourage you to subscribe to the online prosperity show so you can actually get more of these transformative stories and strategies that would help you be, do, and have a happier existence. So let's continue to walk in this path of growth and connection all together. I mean, as you have noticed, shoes are optional. Until next time, keep striving for prosperity in your own terms. Bye for now.